Hey everyone, I wanted to talk to you guys about printing your booklets out because it's a little bit of a different animal than what you're probably used to when you print from InDesign. Even though printing from InDesign is not necessarily a new uh, thing for you, there are some features that make printing a booklet different, so we'll discuss those. Generally speaking, this is called imposition, and that's how pages are reordered so that the beginning of a booklet starts at the beginning of a booklet, and as you proceed through the center, they meet up, so to speak. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense in the abstract, but when you see it for the first time, it'll make total sense. So here I have a 16-page booklet. I have no blank pages in here, but if we did, it's important that we acknowledge those because as we go into the print booklet feature, we'll have to accommodate for that. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to File, Print Booklet, and I'm going to go to, well, in the Setup feature, the booklet type we want is 2-up saddle stitch. There are others, but for us, that's exactly what we want. Again, we'll talk about this in class, but this is the primary concern right here. We also want to make sure that we're printing blank printer spreads. Again, we don't have any in this particular example document, but some of you may. And if we don't, InDesign assumes that you want to save some paper and it will omit them, which will throw off all your pagination. So those are really the two things you need to concern yourself. We don't have to concern ourselves with creep or space between the pages or bleed between the pages. Later in life you might, but for now we'll just leave those. So the next thing we want to do is just double check a preview. If something is wrong, you'll get a little yellow exclamation cautionary sign, and then there will be some red highlights that'll call attention to what is the actual problem. In this case, oftentimes what happens is that the page is rotated 90 degrees one way or the other, and that's just something that you need to simply address through print settings, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But I want to take the time to scroll through here, and this is what I mean by imposition. And we have page 1 and 16, so the front cover and the back cover, and then it'll go 2:15, 14:3, 4:13, 12:5, 6:11, 10:7, and then this is our middle spread 8 and 9. And the reason why it's doing this is because we're going to stack all these up, put a couple of saddle stitches right there, and then fold it in half. And if you were to just print these double-sided, you would actually end up with pages 1 and 2 on the back side of 16 and 15, if I'm remembering right. And so you would flip it and you would go from page 1 to 15, which is obviously not what you want to do. So the next thing we need to do in here, assuming there's no immediate errors to take note of, is hit print settings. And we need to select the printer we want to print this out on. In this case, it's the Fine Arts 118 Lab. And we are going to make sure that this box, very important, print blank pages is on. This is kind of the counterpart to the print blank spreads. Again, if you don't have that checked and you have a blank page, InDesign will think you want to save paper and omit it. So make sure that that is, in fact, checked. Under Setup, we're going to determine our paper size. We want this to be scale at 100% and the page position to be centered. Now, if you had the rotation error I mentioned earlier, you're just going to want to hit this orientation button. I'm going to click OK and force that error, and you can see what it would do. So to fix that, you just come back into Setup and change your orientation. Now that goes away. We're going to go to Marks and Bleed and make sure that our crop marks are checked. This defaults to 6 points. I'm going to move it to 3. That's the offset, so it's going to get a little closer to our actual usable paper size, but that way on a standard 8.5 by 11, both crop marks show up. If you don't change that, it omits the ones on the long edge, so make sure that that is checked. And then I also want to make sure that this Use Document Bleed settings is also checked. That's going to force it to use whatever we set up in the document, which in our case was 1/8 of an inch, 0.125 inches. Output and all this is interesting to run through, but it's nothing that really concerns us. So the final thing we need to do is go to Printer, and make sure that we're printing double-sided, so we're not printing a single-sided booklet. And then we also want to change if it's not already on short edge, change it to short edge binding so that it flips it over that short edge. If your booklet comes out and all of the one side of a page is upside down in relation to the other, it's because you've got it on long edge. So we're going to click print, and then we are going to click OK. And then if we were to want to print this out, we would click print, and that would do it. However, I do want to tell you there's one thing that would make this a lot easier, and we're going to have to do it anyway in our case. It's a good way to test things, and that's to generate a Postscript file. And this is to print, if you can imagine, to just kind of a fake printer. This is the information that would get sent to the printer without actually printing. It's called a Postscript file. So we'll go back into, print settings. And instead of printer, we'll choose Postscript file. And we're going to assign it, in this case, my LaserJet 5200. Device independent won't allow all the options to be active, so you do need to print to a fake printer, even though we're not actually printing right now. We're going to click OK. Everything else is going to be the same, and we are going to click print. And it is going to ask us for where we want to save this. So instead of it going again to a real printer, we're going to just save the information that would have been sent to a printer, and I'll show you what we'll do with that in a second. So we're going to go find this again. Here it is on the desktop. This is just a .ps file, and there's not a lot we can do with that right now. It needs to be converted into something that is visible. So I'm going to, it's not open, I'll just double click it. My default is preview, and you'll notice that my what was previously my InDesign document, where the pagination is in numerical order, is now imposed for a 2-up saddle stitch. So we have the front cover and the back cover side by side. We have the inside front cover and the page 15, the second to last page, side by side. This will allow you to test, make sure you didn't omit any blank pages, that no spreads are missing, without wasting any paper. As we've all mentioned, Johannesburg, totally underwater. This is how you can do your part. The other thing that's really nice about this is instead of having to take some weird InDesign file down to Kinko's, you can just take a regular PDF and tell them, double-side print this over the short edge. They'll know exactly what that is. Whereas if you bring them the original document and tell them you want to print a booklet, chances are you're not going to get what you wanted. So this is the preferred way to print. Run a Postscript file first, and we'll talk about this in class, but we'll run a Postscript file first, convert it to a PDF, and if all looks good here, then we'll do the actual print. Hope that helps. Talk to you in class.